So now we are going into a governance panel with Kirsten Patterson, KP. So I will pass the mic and let's get into it.
Ngā mihi nui ki a koe, everyone. Thank you. Kia ora tātou. Welcome everybody to what is going to be an amazing conversation with three phenomenal New Zealand leaders. We're going to be talking about youth governance. It's always a bit of a funny point about whether we should even describe governance within terms of female governance, Māori governance, youth governance, because it's actually all governance. But that was just part of the kind of hook to get everyone's attention to just come and meet some really amazing directors. I'm going to put a quick note into the chat there, so please do let us know with any questions and things that you've got. A little bit about me, as Avril said, I'm Kirsten Patterson, but everyone calls me KP, and I'm the Chief Executive for the Institute of Directors here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. For those of you who don't know about the IOD, we're the membership body that supports directors and boards, trying to help you all right across everything from NZX listed through to privately held startups, not-for-profits. Over half our members have got not-for-profit roles, school boards of trustees, sports clubs, everything in between, because we really believe that great governance really does transform our businesses and it really does transform our communities, and that leads to a better and stronger and more sustainable and fair New Zealand. So that's our purpose. We're there to help. There's lots of things you can find on our website. You don't necessarily have to be an IOD member to get access to lots of great resources. So if you're thinking about governance or you're thinking about your organisation, about how you might be able to support it, please do check out particularly our For Purpose Hub, which is where a lot of our free resources and guides are. This panel we have today are doing some really amazing work. So we have a panel of Jess Dellabarca, who's the co-chair of Rainbow Youth. We've got Aorangi who's an independent director on a number of boards and is also our youngest chartered member with the Institute of Directors. To become a chartered member, you not only have to do a course of study, but you have to sit an exam and you have to do an assignment and you have to be on a board of significance where there's a separation between governance and management. So a huge achievement for him. And we have Raani Kelderman with us as well, who's the National Commissioner and on the National Board for Scouts New Zealand. So three people doing some wonderful things in our community. And I'm going to lead a conversation, but please do let us know with some questions. So Jess, I'm going to come to you first because you were first on my list. So you probably suspected that. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you get into governance?
Oh, kia ora, ngā mihi nui ki a koe, KP. Ko waio I te taha o tōku papa, ko Dragone te awa, ko Marina Dellabarca te moana, ko Masalabrante ki Ataria te motu, ko Jessica Dellabarca tōku ingoa. I tipu aki au ki te whanganui atara, engare kei te noho au ki Tamaki Makaurau. Ko matairangi te maunga e ru nei taku nākau, ko te awa kairangi te awa e mahia nei aku maharahara, ko tēnei taku mihi ki ngā tangata whenua o te rohi nei, ka mihi hoki a hau ki ngā tohu o te rohi nei. So kia ora koutou, my name is Jessica Dellabarca, or Jess as I more commonly go by. So I'm one of the co-chairs of Rainbow Youth, which is a for youth by youth charity that helps rainbow communities, specifically youth rainbow communities in Takatapoi throughout Aotearoa. So I got into governance in a way that I think probably quite a few people do, where I was shoulder tapped. I'd always loved Rainbow Youth, and the kaupapa is very close to my heart, being a queer woman. And I'd always seen the board AGM come up every year and thought, oh, maybe I could do that, but I don't know if I quite have the skills. And then there was one year last year when a couple of people came up to me and said, if we need some employment law expertise on the panel, on the board, do you think you'd be interested? So applied and got appointed in June last year, and then our chairperson stepped down, so was also shoulder tapped to step up to chairperson, where I'm still currently there.
Fantastic, Jess. They're amazing work, and I've been really lucky to to have your leadership. And it's quite a common experience, I think, for many of us, that shoulder tapping, often not putting ourselves forward. My first experience of getting into governance, I had to deliver a raffle prize to the local Plunket AGM. And my husband said to me, don't come back being on the committee. But I came back from the AGM as the president, and that was my step into governance. I think I was the last person to do this at the meeting, but that someone's sort of pushing you forward and shoulder tapping you. It's great that people see that in us, isn't it? Te Aorangi, coming to you, tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and how did you get into governance?
Yeah, kia ora KP, and he tautoko ake tēnei ngā mihi kia tātou katoa. Kua kotahi mai runga i te reo karanga o tā tātou kaupapa i tēnei ata. Ko Te Aorangi me whiwhau taku ingoa no te Wairarapa. Engari kua roa e noho nei ki mā tātu awaka ki whakatāne. Nō reira, kia ora everyone, good morning. Good to be here with you all. I come from a little marae called Pirino on the South Wairarapa coast, but I've been fortunate to be living in the sunny Bay of Plenty for the last 13 years or so. So it's great to join you all this morning, and very much like what KP and Jess have shared, I was also shoulder tapped, and I guess my first kind of experience in governance was on a regional sporting board, which I'm actually still on, and they came to me about 3.5 years ago after I just finished at university actually, and I did a management degree in finance and intended to enter the game, intended to enter the kind of FX and interest rate trading game, but decided to go down a slightly different route. However, I was approached and shoulder tapped because they had a couple of board members that were resigning, and they kind of shoulder tapped me and said, we don't really have anyone who understands the numbers. So that was essentially my kind of entry into governance. I also went along to the AGM and happened to be appointed to the board, and it's kind of all happened from there. And since then, I've really kind of taken my role of governance is more a passion for me, to supplement my work of my everyday work. And so I've just been very fortunate with the opportunities that I've been afforded, and yeah, it's been obviously still really early on in the journey, but just over the last 3 to 4 years, it's been quite eye-opening, and it's given me the ability to have a say on different kaupapa without having to give, to commit to a full-time role. So yeah, kia ora.
Thank you, and we'll definitely want to come back and talk to you a little bit more about that impact that governance can make. But last of our panel is Raani. Raani, tell us a little bit about you, about the work that you're doing with Scouts, and how did you get into governance? Quite a different journey.
Yes, thank you, Kirsten. Kia ora koutou. Ko te rangi te moanga, ko piha te ahau, ko te tai o rua te moana, he uri o Ngāti Tati Manaketi taha o toko papa, he uri o India ki Fiji ki te taha o toko mama. Ko Raani Kelderman toko ingoa. So kia ora everyone, my name is Raani Kelderman. I am the National Commissioner of Scouts Aotearoa. Ironically, the National Commissioner is a bit of a quasi-governance operational role, the one weird role in the movement, and probably weird for many organisations. How I got into governance, like many of you, I was shoulder tapped after doing some vision work for the movement when I was 18, and then shoulder tapped into the National Council, which is sort of a body of stakeholders you can imagine for the movement that sort of comes together and own our strategy and our plan. And from there, I was mentored into joining the board and eventually as National Commissioner. And so it's a bit of a journey, and now I have the really pleasant role of shoulder tap and mentor a lot of young people who we consider a young person under 26 in Scouting, and our youngest member of National Council is currently 14 years old. So really, really awesome just to have young people in the room contributing to governance.
Yeah, it's wonderful to sort of see that. So there's a real theme coming through for each of you with this piece about taking and being shoulder tapped. So people, coming to you and seeing that potential, but then you also say yes to that opportunity. So I think for all of us, there's two messages there about reaching in and asking people, because actually they may not see the opportunity in themselves or may not put themselves forward for those applications or elections or other processes. So it's really incumbent on us to bring great talent in by seeking it out and shoulder tapping and asking people if they're interested, but then also taking those opportunities when they come to us and not letting that little imposter voice that I don't know sits on everyone's shoulder, but I know there's a 12-year-old girl that sits on mine, and not listening to her all the time and saying, hey, yes, I'll take that opportunity. Te Aorangi, you talked about making a difference through governance. What does governance mean for you, and what difference are you trying to make through governance?
It's a very good question, KP. And in terms of what governance means to me, I totally agree with all of the kind of general thinking about what governance is in terms of driving strategy and driving direction and all of that. There's one point I did want to pick up on, and it was highlighted to me actually through some governance work I've been doing with the national sporting body recently, and working with their board. And one of the things that really popped up was, and I think this is where something that governance can make a real difference, is what is it that makes our organisations specifically unique to Aotearoa New Zealand? And I kind of think, and I'll take a national sporting body, and I kind of think, what is it that makes that sporting body, or what is it that makes that organisation, regardless of whether it's a corporate, whether it's a not-for-profit, whether it's a government organisation, what is it that makes that organisation different from any other organisation that could be anywhere else around the world? And I think that's a real role that is probably, I guess, not focused on enough at that kind of governance level. We often focus on driving direction and driving strategy and ensuring the numbers are all right and managing risk and all of those things. But on top of that, I think we also have a responsibility to create or share value by kind of also focusing on what is it that makes that organisation, like I said, regardless of whether it's an NZX 50 company, whether it's small kind of local community organisation, what is it that makes it unique to Aotearoa in terms of our models, in terms of our practices, and in terms of our thinking, and in terms of how we kind of show that, I guess, to our stakeholders. So that's something I'm always kind of thinking about, regardless of who it is I'm working with. And yeah, it does include Māori and it does include other nationalities as well, but it's kind of what makes Aotearoa unique. So that's kind of something that I think about in terms of governance at the moment.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. And I love that piece about it being unique, not only here in our context, but also I'm often asked about governance best practice. What's the best practice for this? Give me the answer, give me the model, give me the the sort of the checklist of everything. And and sure, there's some legal duties we've got to sit and be comfortable with, and some boundaries. But actually, governance should be different in each organisation, because it's got to be reflective of the strategy in the organisation, and it should be different down here in our corner of the world, right? It should reflect our place and who we are and what makes us special. So yeah, really lovely to hear that come through. Jess, coming to you, what about, what does governance mean for you, and what difference are you hoping to make through your board roles and through governance?
Yeah, completely agree with what's just been said, and especially in the, general strategic finance, making sure that everything's okay. The thing that I've found the most helpful when I'm figuring out my role in governance for, say, operations, someone once described the role of governance as a helicopter on top of a boat going along the sea, and that the role of the board is to stay in that helicopter, to keep an eye on the boat, make sure that the boat's able to navigate the challenges that are coming up ahead. And sometimes when it's smooth sailing, that helicopter is able to go further away and think further long term about what's going to come. And sometimes when it's really choppy waters and things are really challenging, and we had an incident of that last year with Rainbow Youth, the helicopter sometimes almost needs to land on that boat to make sure that things are going to be okay. So I found that really helpful when I'm trying to come back to the basic principles of what's my role as a governor. I think in terms of difference, I think our sole kind of purpose is to make sure that Rainbow Youth is in the best position that it possibly can be to make sure that it can deliver and stay true to its kaupapa, which is to support and help Rainbow young people. I've also found it really helpful. I went on a course with KP, and one of the speakers said, if you've got nothing, if you don't have much time in a board meeting, a question that you should always ask is the organisation better off than it was when we first met? And that's been a guiding principle for me since then.
I love the helicopter metaphor, and it's one we often hear a lot. And I know Stephen's in the group, and he and I just spoke recently at a Governance for Churches conference, and one of the things we kind of talked about in that context is it often actually feels more like a drone than a helicopter sometimes, because when you're a not-for-profit, you sometimes don't get to take your feet off the ship. You're still going to be in the ship kind of doing it at the same time as you're trying to send the drone up and kind of look a little bit further out. But that perception of when things are good, you can get a little bit further away is a really, really relevant one. I know I've lived in a number of my not-for-profit boards. Raani, tell us about what governance means for you in your context and your living youth governance, and what difference are you hoping to make through your roles.
I was just going to say, I really love the helicopter and the boat. I use quite a similar analogy. So Scouting is a membership organisation. We have 15,000 members. And I say, imagine we're all on a cruise ship. All our participants, all our members are the participants on this cruise ship. Our staff team, not many of them, but our staff team, our operational leaders, they are the ones serving on the cruise ship, keeping the engine running. And so they're going to have inputs that need to be addressed, like they need more fuel, they need new solar panels or something like that. But the board, they sit in the navigation room. So they're the ones looking at the weather charts, looking at what are the storms coming up ahead. So we've just passed through the storm of COVID-19. What's coming up ahead? What trajectory, what waters do we have to look through and track our course through, while meeting the needs of our members on the board who want to stop at every fun stop. I'm working with a lot of young people, so this is an analogy that works really well for a 14-year-old. But really love the helicopter one. I might have to adapt my own one for that. As to like what governance means to me, it's really about focusing on the purpose of your organisation. So at Scouting, we empower young people through adventurous journeys to lead lives that make a positive difference. And so when I'm sitting at the board table, I'm thinking, okay, we've done all our compliance things. The next steps for Scouting Aotearoa. What does that mean, and how will it help us to achieve our purpose? Are we focusing a lot of attention on something that doesn't actually meet that purpose? There's a common saying, show me your budget and I'll tell you what your priorities are. And so working through how are we focusing our attention? Where are we redirecting staff? Where are we redirecting member organisation? How are we focusing on our product of youth development? And for me, empowering more young people, because we get young people surveys, and the number one that I've always laughed at is that one, the 5-year-olds say their favourite part about Scouting is that they get a lolly at the end of the night. And I'm like, who's getting lollies? Second part, this is the most telling thing. The world is turning to SHIT, and I want to do something about it. And so how do we empower a young person to make a difference? And we use a lot of models like Heart's Ladder. So how are we sitting on Heart's Ladder in every single discussion? How are we working towards Kendrick's arrow to make sure people are organisationally in the room, but are empowered and developed to make an impact? And so for me, that's really important, doing that development, doing that mentoring around the board during the board discussion, because it's really, really easy to close someone out of a discussion by changing your language, but it's also really, really easy to bring someone into the discussion the same way.
You're doing wonderful work, creating our next generation of directors, right? Coming through those leadership skills are so critical. And what a wonderful description, adventurous journey. That's a really, really lovely description. I'm going to come back to you, Raani. So to talk about any barriers you face, we often hear, for younger directors trying to get in, what barriers have you faced, and what sort of opportunities do you see in the future, and what advice would you give for someone wanting to get involved in governance?
I think the best advice I can give is building a team. The board is a team. Building the team around your stakeholders in your movement. So I talked briefly about Hendrix Arrow. It's a model that we developed in Scouting to help actually empower everyone in the room. And that is sort of the core. You have to be very, very intentional. Find allies, building those allies, building the relationships. I'm very lucky now that we've got a very cohesive board, very cohesive National Council, but that doesn't happen through magic. It happens through work, talking through, having an intergenerational partnership. So when someone starts talking into the detail, going, hey, hold up, let's bring this back to common English. Not everyone in the room understands CapEx, OpEx, and know exactly what you're talking about. Let's retranslate. And this also provides an empowering role for a karahi or an adult or a mentor to go, oh yeah, here's an opportunity for me to teach, which actually helps strengthen their ability to tie people together. And it's a really good learning opportunity for everyone in the room. But being very, very intentional about the culture. Culture goes from the top down. And so setting that organizational culture is very, very important. If someone is in the chat, I can put through a link for Heart's Ladder. It's a really, really cool tool. And you really want to stay on the top 3 rungs where young people or anyone is sort of having collaborative decisions. And you defer to the tuakana, so the person with knowledge, who are there to help support the tainer, who is the one who is learning. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And just, you know, you've come through a youth organisation. So I would hope that maybe the barriers weren't as pronounced for you, but maybe they were still there. Have you faced those sorts of barriers?
Yes, especially in an international context. So Scouting is in 173 countries worldwide. Scouts Aotearoa has the youngest board. We're 60% under 30. And our National Council is 75% under 28. So we're doing really well in terms of upskilling our young people, building up more and more training. Overseas, one of the big barriers, especially in the Asia Pacific context, I am a young woman who's of Indian descent. And so having that sort of barrier, you have to really learn to sort of stand your ground, but also work within different cultures and understand where is this person coming from? What is the context of their view? And then you have to work together to sort of build a bridge as to where do we connect? Where is our common ground? How can we communicate on a level that respects the mana of both people? And that changes in every situation. And as I said before, it comes to having allies. So that intergenerational partnership to support another young person or support another person who is feeling like they're the minority in the room, to stand up, to speak up with confidence, engaging with them and going, supporting them. It can be something as simple as, thank you, Jess. You made a really great contribution. I really appreciate that. I'm going to think about that. That is enough to help support someone who is feeling a little unconfident in the room. And more often than not, it might not also be the young person. It can be anyone in the room.
Yeah, thank you, Raani. Jess, what about you? Any barriers you've faced? What sort of change would you like to see? And what advice would you have for people coming in?
And just before, we've just got 5 minutes left. Just keeping an eye on that clock. Take it away, Jess.
Oh, thank you. So I think for me, and actually for the whole Rainbow Youth Board, so for context, the Rainbow Youth Board is age capped at 27. So everyone on there is a youth director, which has its challenges, and mainly those are from experience, in that most of the people that we get on that board, it's their first governance experience. So there is a lot of upskilling, and ideally what we want to do is get people at the lower age groups. We take people on from 16 up to 27, and unfortunately, I joined at 25, my first governance experience. I feel like I'm just getting the skills. I've done a lot of professional development and I'm going to age out. So I think our main concerns sit with that experience. And so what we really need to be doing and are trying to do is to foster an environment where everyone's okay to learn, okay to ask questions, and can be on that journey together. What that does require is external support. So we've now got a system where we have what we call executive advisors, who are people older than 27 who are able to come in, mentor, support, and help grow the board. So they come along to all the board meetings but don't vote, which works really well to balance that inexperience with people who have some more experience and are able to kind of help guide the board to be the best that they can. I've seen a comment come through, I think it was from Ben, about the risks of governance with young people. And I really agree, it's quite a challenging time, especially with the change of the Incorporated Societies Act. So a lot of the for-purpose organisations operate in that incorporated society structure where there's not liability for directors, and that's about to change, which is really concerning. And is something that we're working through as Rainbow Youth. I'm not sure whether or not that was entirely thought through for smaller organisations who might not be aware of the risks that they're about to come into. So that's kind of I think will be one of that barriers moving forward. I'm really needing that training. And do you look at insurance? If you're a small organisation, where's that money going to come from? So I see that as a big barrier. In terms of change, I'm really looking forward to seeing more co-governance. Rainbow Youth is on a co-governance journey at the moment where we have a Māori executive board that works alongside the board, which is really exciting. I see there's only a couple minutes left, so I'm going to stop there. But advice would be to give it a go and to lean on others for support.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, Jess. There's lots of great support out there over in that not-for-profit sector, including, from the SEED conference, the work that Stephen Moe does, Kerry Field has got a number of guides with changes coming up for constitutions and incorporated societies that changes. Really encourage people to dive into those. Te Aorangi, you can going to finish us out. Tell us about barriers you face and leave us with some inspirational advice for these people to take away.
Inspirational advice. I think I've been very fortunate not to have faced too many barriers so far anyway to date in my kind of governance journey. But one thing I do kind of think there's an opportunity for us. I think there's an opportunity for us here in New Zealand to encourage more young people onto boards through providing young people with the ability to see themselves on those boards. At the moment, I think we kind of see governance as something that people kind of get into as their kind of career starts to wind down, and they use kind of governance as a way to supplement some of that, and keep you kind of in the game. Whereas I kind of think that, there's benefit to being kind of having a career and also being in governance. I think there's benefit to that. And I think there's also benefit and there's work for us. There's work for boards, particularly at the kind of higher levels, to ensure that those boards are places that young people actually see themselves. And I'm not saying young people as in like 20 years old, that young. I'm saying, anyone under kind of 40 or 50 is kind of considered young in the governance game. So I think there's definitely opportunities for young people to further see themselves, and also opportunities for our kind of models of governance to change. I kind of use conflicts of interest as an example, because often, kind of we see conflicts of interest as a negative and something that we need to manage and all of those things, which I totally understand. But I think there's also, just from kind of what I've seen, is that there's also a lot of benefit that comes from conflicts of interest. And often some of our best decisions are often made when we are conflicted. And so I think we've got a lot of work to do in the governance space in Aotearoa around conflicts of interest and how we kind of use those to our advantage. So that's what I'd kind of leave us to think about now. Kia ora.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you. We're being on time. What a wonderful, wonderful group of leaders. New Zealanders in safe hands. So don't be scared about inviting more youth directors into your organisations. Take the opportunity to reach out, be one yourself, go and take those opportunities and really kind of reach out to sort of this new generation coming through. We are, as I said, very sapiens, and IOD is here to help you. Any questions, if there's anything we can do to help you along the journey, please do let us know. And thanks for the opportunity to share the story with you today. Enjoy the rest of the Seeds Conference. April, I'll hand back to you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, KP. And thank you to all of our speakers. Incredible. I've already taken a bunch of notes on that one, so that was really great. And now we are...